Hello, my friends and fellow leaders. Welcome to Leadership Unfiltered. I'm your host, Shannon Hammond, and I'm glad to have you back here with me this week on the podcast. And if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. I am so happy that you are here and that you are taking the time to invest in your growth and development as a leader. Today is going to be an episode that I am really excited about. I have a very special guest here with me today, my friend and fellow coach, Anny Liao. And we are going to talk about a really important topic for new leaders. So, before we dive into that, I want to just take a minute and share a little bit about Anny. So she has over 15 years of corporate leadership experience in the field of engineering. And she is now the owner of Create Transformation Coaching, where she is doing incredible work in supporting, coaching, and guiding leaders. Welcome to the podcast, Anny.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm so excited
Yay.
about the topic. It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, this is going to be fantastic. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. So, before we dive into that, can you share just a little bit about what your leadership experience has been and what inspired you to want to be a coach specifically for leaders?
I graduated with an electrical engineering degree, and I was fortunate that I started doing actual engineering work. I love geeking out. I'm an electronics design, hardware design engineer at heart, and I build fun things, important things, um, top security related things, and so along the ways as I was, transitioning from individual contributors into bigger programs and, deciding whether or not I wanted to move into management or not, there's always a pivot point for people.
Yeah.
There was a moment in time where I thought, I really wish, 'cause there were so many missed moments that I wish my managers backed me in some ways and supported me. And I really very much first set out to be the manager that I wish I had when I
Mm,
transitioned into leadership. That was the vision or the goal. And then as I got into those positions where, initially you're just supervising tasks and then you become, you know, the more and more people fall under you and you become what they like to call you a people leader. The skill set that I realized I needed, or I intuitively felt that I needed, wasn't being taught. Like no one was giving it to me. And so I went on a journey of actually figuring out what that's supposed to look like. There was something in me that was telling me that the stuff that I was seeing, or for sure the goal that I set out to not to be the kind of manager that I wish I had inside the company, I wasn't learning it. And so
mm,
along the way, the biggest transformation is, I love designing product, right? Things that are useful. And in order products and services. And in order for that actually to occur, I am not doing it myself, right? Because I'm leading a group of people with multi geolocations, different time zones. And in order for that to happen, and I'm always aware that I work for a for-profit company because we're here to make money, was that if I wasn't building people properly, there was no way that we were building good products. It just like that equation does not come out. And so my job became, I could do the technology side, no problem. I have really smart people and I don't have issues about having smarter people on my team than I do. And so that was not the issue. Like having intelligence on my team was never the issue. But being able to pull the best out of those people who are super intelligent and have them work together, that was the trick. And that was really what I saw was missing. And that
mm,
naturally transitioned me into doing a lot of coaching inside of my own team. And then slowly other people sought me out inside the company. And, COVID did a lot of transitioning for many people. And I really just felt a universe pushing me to say, you've been talking about this, go do it. And I have been doing that ever since.
awesome. I love it. I love what you said of building, you have to build people to really be able to build a great product, right? Because that I think is is the heart of leadership. And I think especially for new leaders of really understanding what your role truly is,
Hmm.
right? And that can be a hard transition for our new leaders,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And I think that transitions perfectly into our topic today, right? So, stepping into leadership for the first time, it's exciting, right? We all loved our first leadership role, yet it can also be very overwhelming. And one of the things, I know I've seen in my leadership journey, you shared a little bit about it, so I'm sure that you've experienced and seen it as well, is you know a lot of times organizations, they set maybe unrealistic or incorrect expectations for new leaders, and oftentimes those new leaders themselves, they might have some missed expectations about what their role truly is, or they put some really heavy expectations on them. So what would you say from your experiences, knowing all of this, like what would you say are some of the most common unrealistic expectations that organizations do place on their new leaders?
I mean, absolutely. And I would say this is a lived experience. I remember the first time I transitioned from an individual contributor into something where I had people responsibility under me. Like they were reporting to me. One of the biggest differences, there is the dotted line, right? You're kind of organizing their work. But the biggest sort of realization, like, oh my God, I have more responsibilities when I have to do somebody's performance reviews. Like that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
biggest hallmark, right? And one of the things that when I first stepped into a position like that, it was honestly, there wasn't a lot of clear directions from the company that I was at. They just say, we recognize you for all the hard work. You've been an excellent engineer and people really engage with you. So we're gonna give you more responsibility. And that's it. Um, on one hand, you could say, I'm so glad that you trust me and value me and, see me having this capability. But on the other hand, it's like, so now what? Do I just have like, am I doing two people's work? Am I doing three people's work? Am I still doing, um, am I still doing what they call working manager, right? So, I was still doing design and then I have to manage people. Um, and, I'm a bit of an overachiever, we'll call it that. I'm just like, all right, I'll take it on, I'll do it, right? Um, but the reality of it is, I didn't know what I didn't know, and no one was sort of giving me hints on here are the potential like bumps that you might, and no one even warned me about it. And one of the biggest bump was I thought I had to do two people's job,
Mm-hmm.
right? And not that as individual contributors, we weren't already doing two or three people's worth of job. So now I had a clearly like even a different responsibility of like making sure people were okay, administrative type stuff, timesheets, and all those things. Well, none of my other daily individual contributor type work was taken away. And the fallacy here is that we shrug that responsibility to the people who kind of promoted us to tell us, okay, you can stop doing this, and then you can pick up this one, right? Like some sort of unspoken, you know what to do now. Like now that you got a title, you know what to do. I'm like, yay and no, right? And so that's a really interesting sort of piece where like we kind of I don't know where the thought came from. Like magically, when you get a new title, you now have like 100% capability of everything that title might suggest. And the
Yeah.
reality of it is you may have 10% of that capability and you were meant to grow and train into that, but now you're supposed to be 100% overnight, right? And depending on your personality, like you hit it hard, you might learn, but standard, I mean that first, I don't know what you would call it, 90 days, first year, honestly, you're just you feel completely underwater. And I will bet, I mean, I will there should be like a $5 jar somewhere, right? Anytime anyone says, "What did I do? Why did I say yes to this? Was I crazy? The money is not worth it." you
Yep.
know? And so those are the kind of things that like you step into where no clear direction, weird societal expectation, and you now do not know how to delegate, parse, even prioritize. No clue. Completely in the blind.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up because I've talked about that several times in the podcast where it's
Mm,
like Friday, you're in your individual contributor role, you're the high performer, you're doing really well. Monday, you walk in and you now have this new title, and your boss expects that you're going to hit the ground running because maybe that position has sat open for a minute, right? Even if it's only been open for a couple weeks, there was somebody got promoted into a leadership role because somebody else promoted out or they left the organization or some kind of change happened.
right,
And so now you're in this role where you're the leader. Your boss has an expectation, unsaid often, that you're going to hit the ground running. You know what you're doing. You don't need direction. You're a leader now, right? I don't need to tell you what to do.
exactly.
The people that report to you, they're like, well, you're my boss. Don't you have the answer? Like they're looking to you for the
Right.
answer. So there's all these projections that come from all these places. And the new leader is sitting there like deer in the headlights going, oh my God. Yeah. If I think back to when I first became a leader, if I had a quarter for every time I thought,
Yeah.
oh my God,
Well, I mean,
like
we'd be rich.
yeah, like was this really the decision that I should have made? Like what the
Mhm.
hell was I thinking? Like
Yeah.
I I'd probably be rich by now, like at that point, with just a quarter, much less anything more than that, because it was something, it came up every single day. Like there was always something that came up where it was almost like this shot to my confidence of a daily reminder of you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. Hey, by the way, did we tell you? You don't know what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting, like you just mentioned this, right? Like a shot to your confidence. We talk about imposter syndrome and I don't want to go down a rabbit trail, but like this is the place where it breeds
Yes.
because you're already a little nervous. There's a part of you go, well, did I really deserve that promotion? Or, you garner the courage to sort of apply for something because this is the advice, right? We give, right? For women, especially, is go for that job that you're not 100% quote qualified for because we all think that we need to supposed to be 100% and you took multiple deep breaths, suck up the courage to speak up and you got it. And so now on the back end of it, you go, yeah, but I'm not really 100% ready. And so you're already walking in with that uncertainty. And then when someone asks you a question you don't know, and your boss says, hey, I want this by, Friday, and you have no idea what that report even is, right? And so now you're like, I really don't know what I'm doing. There you go. Here's the evidence.
Yeah. And all too often, I think sometimes you don't even know who's the person that you go to for help,
Oh,
right? Because
absolutely.
you're learning your team. It might be a team that you weren't a part of before. So you don't know who the subject matter experts are, who are the people that you can go to for guidance, right? You're learning the people that report to you and what are their experiences and the knowledge that they bring. And like you shared about your own team, a lot of times there is a significant amount of intelligence in your team on their job. They know, right?
Hmm.
There's a reason they're in that role. Yet you as the leader are trying to navigate, okay, who knows what is old thinking versus new thinking, what's like what are the different dynamics, because there's always a different dynamic that leader walks into in that team as well. So it's a lot of navigating a lot of new things, and when you're not sure what the direction really is,
Right.
right?
Right.
What is on your plate, what it can become harder to even navigate.
Right. And it's a huge transition, right? Depending on whether you, like you say, it's a role that or people that you're familiar with versus a changing of a job. Right? Some people change company completely because the opportunity offer a step up
Yeah.
and they saw some potential and that's great, very affirming. But you step into that and it's transition everywhere, right? Different company culture,
Mhm.
Like I laugh about the job description and you look at it, go, yeah, that is not what I do. Like once you sort of started breathing a little bit, every single job transition that I had, like from one company to another, you get hired based on the job description. And you look
Yep.
at it, go, I get it, I get it. And when you're interviewing when you get interviewed, they interview off of the job description. Like, okay, good, we're solid. You think like, okay, everybody knows what's going on, and you step into it, it is like night and day. And the interesting part that just came to me here is, a lot of times when you step into a position, whether it is internal or external, there is an expectation that you will do exactly what the previous person did, especially if this is a replacement position. Like, oh, the previous person did it this way and they were this kind of leader, and you need to be that kind of leader. And talk about a hard transition, because I'm pretty sure you're not the same people, right?
Mm.
Different kind of experiences, different way of engaging people. And often if you don't know how to manage that transition, the way sort of getting to know people, the emotional intelligence required to really figure it out, that's another layer of overwhelm that comes to you. And then at some point, do you decide like, I'm gonna change the way that this leader's position, how it engages the rest of that, other entities inside the company, the way that I think it ought to be, or do I stay with what it was before, right? And those are really, really tough decisions and really difficult to manage, because external expectations, internal alignment, and how do you make that to make sure that it runs smoothly for you,
Yeah.
right? So many layers of that in there.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because that is so true, especially for if you're a brand new leader, like you're stepping into that and this is your first leadership role.
Hmm.
You also don't have maybe the experience or confidence maybe in yourself as a leader to know who am I really as a
Hmm.
leader and what does that look like, right? And I think that adds that whole other layer of complexity and that transition of expectations. It's like, okay, so if the previous leader was doing this and this is how they handled this situation or this is how they showed up in meetings, you start to say, okay, well, is that the culture of the team, right? Is this how we are supposed to do it, or is this an area that I can change? And I can even say as a tenured leader, I had that experience where it came in recently to a role behind a leader to say that we are polar opposites is completely understating how different we were as leaders and how we would handle things. And even for myself, of having been confident in who I was as a leader, I had a lot of leadership experience before I even went into that role. I knew I was not handling situations that way. That's just not how I work. That leader like to drop the hammer, if you will, on others. Like she was very just, it's my way, or it's my way. Pick one. And I'm like, well, let's just talk about it. Like, we can work this out. Like, how can we come together? And even then, for myself, like, I saw there was a point where I was like, ooh, like, okay, who do I need to be? Who do I want to be in this moment? And that even hit my confidence a little bit because it does shake up that relationship that you're building with your new team, right? Of
Oh, yeah,
trying to
absolutely.
get to know them, build their trust in you as a leader, and sometimes you do have to make that difficult decision of, I'm not doing things the way that the person did before, not because of what they did was right or wrong, but it's not you.
Yeah, totally. And so, as I'm thinking about my past, I remember I have had both of those situation where I came in, existing position, and there was no guidance, so let me mimic what was there before. Of course, the mimicking, this is the part, like you mimic and the people that you inherited are a little more comfortable. They're used to that, right? And that's great. But then it really did not feel like it wasn't me. So eventually I started changing, and that confused them to no end.
Mhm.
Because they experienced you for a little while because I was just trying to stay afloat, then really being like that, no, this is not how I work. Like it doesn't, and then started to just try to rein it in, try to realign the way that I manage and I lead with more of the inner compass and the value that guides me. But then that changed the way that I spoke to them, to change the way we made decisions. And like there was that created another transition, like what's happening here, right? And so there's a lot of nuances about when you stepping in, and I think I'm thinking about like the heart of all this is a lot of communication, right? Who's saying
Yeah.
what to who, and are you saying the thing that really matters, and are you saying it to the people that really matters too? And I think, we miss the ballpark a lot on all those areas.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned like a transition for your team, right? Because they're sitting there, they're confused. That's a transition for you as the leader too.
Hmm.
So, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that that leads into part of some of our conversations of missed expectations and the expectations that the leaders place on themselves. And when you're trying to mimic others, I think there's a time and a place for that, but there's also a time when again, you have to be true to who you are. So when you're in that moment of where you're making that transition of, okay, I tried to do it their way, I tried to mimic them, but now I really need to do it my way, my
Yeah.
leadership style. Like what for you as a leader, like what comes up for you in that situation?
If I could have a do-over, when I first started, like I wish I had known myself a little better. I think this is where coaching is so important, right?
Mm,
Having someone, I mean, if a company see you as a rising star and give you that support, awesome, but most of the time that is not the case. And,
yeah.
people who have the drive to want to do more, to do better, have to invest in themselves in some ways.
Mm,
So knowing your values, kind of have an understanding how you continue to evolve as a individual, and therefore and choose like who do you want to be as a individual, as a leader, as a person that deal with tough situations. You want to have, like you and I are always I think we could say to say we're always work in progress. We just continue to evolve, right? We learn and learn and learn, even as we coach people. And so just think about it. It absolutely is a journey, but it's a little short destination, maybe a pit stop. You can just give yourself some breathing room, but like you gotta learn more about yourself. And as I started be be in more transitions, right? What the things that I didn't do before is about super clear. Have a sit down conversation of like just being super honest. Like, hey, I know we have this, job, like to my boss, to my peers, and to the people that I report to. I have these kind of
mm,
conversations, which is, hey, I know that this is the job description you gave me, and you and I know, haha, that this is never really the job description. So let's have an honest conversation. I'm here, I'm not running away. So tell me what it is that you really would like to see, if it's a new position or a created position, like give me what your like heaven on earth description would be if like I could really hit everything that you want, right? Because at this point they hired you, right? They spent the money, right? And you're here. Like you might have moved across the country for that kind of stuff, right? So you're in. So let's just be honest about like what is it that you're looking for. And as you're having that conversation, whether you feel comfortable enough to say, well, that's really off, or just absorb that information in. Ask, right? Because if you don't ask, they won't say. And a lot of times, what I found that is as I'm asking my bosses those questions, they go, I didn't think about that. Literally. Like there was,
mm,
I did not think about that. And because we're just having like a real honest conversation, I'm not like holding a gun to their head, just like just trying to understand.
Yeah.
Because um and use this phrase if you want, right? Anybody who's listening, right? Because this is not trying to butter up your superior, but I know that my job is to make my boss look good.
Ooh, yes. I
I
love
know
that.
my job, and I say, and that's usually a bit of an opener for me when I have that conversation. It's like, hey, beyond all of this job description, like it's not there, but I know my job is to make you look good. I know my job is trying to not, surprise you, right? And well, and it's about like, what does it making you look good look like? You could just start from there, right? They could give you like, I really would love it if you do this. My last person did this to me and it was embarrassing. They would give you all sorts of like good tidbit information. And now it's just a personal relationship you're building, right? And you can build into from that, what does he hope that you accomplish sort of division wise, team wise, company wise, stuff like that could happen, right? Because who does not want someone whose sole purpose is to make you feel like make you look good in front of other people? Come on, right?
Yeah.
So that's one conversation that I would have managing up. Across your peers, it's probably more of a, hey, let me get to know you, right? My method is really, um, I feel like I read people pretty well. And I worked on emotional intelligence a lot. It's a skill. It's not a magic, like everybody, skill, learn it, right? And so using those kind of skill sets to actually gauge your peers. That's the first step.
Mhm.
And then you don't quite say my job is to make you look good. Just like how, if there were prior acts before, what worked and what didn't work. And then you start sussing out their communication style, right? Because a good leader pivots.
Yes.
One of the things about me as an engineering leader, and this is a standard response from a lot of people. It's like, I don't know why, but like, I could never talk to the other engineering director before, but I could talk to you. They're not
Mhm.
telling me their deepest, darkest secret. We're talking company stuff because I can pivot I learned along the way about how to pivot the conversation or translate the language in a way that then my goal for getting things done is getting across, right? And so learn the communication style of your peers, people who are important. That's another piece of the transition. Then you have the conversation with your team members. And I typically start the conversation there. New leader, we're gonna have some time to get to know each other. I don't know if anybody's done this for you, but I am gonna give you the keys to how to communicate with me. And this is a great thing to actually have for anybody to actually have a document of how to work with Shannon, how to work with Annie, right? Like you put down the way that it really like it's effective. You want to get my attention, this is the way you want to get my attention. If you want to do this, and I also tell them sometimes I do this is a little bit of bad habit, and don't take offense at that. Like I hope you remember, right? So you have a introductory conversation with your peers about keys. I'm handing you keys to the kingdom. This is how you can talk to me to get my attention. This is how you can get me to help you. And you know, I put this out. Now we're kind of spitting in our hands and shake on it, right? So that we start out with a shortcut, a hack, however you want to call it. You don't have to worry about learning my style. I'm going to give it to you. If you
Yeah.
use it, I will see it. I will know you paid attention. Well, that's another thing for me to like gauge who's actually wanting to work with me, right? But so this is a very much a me setting up my domain kind of a thing. And I did not do that when I first came in. I started seeing different pieces of it working. And then, in my final like 10 years of like big company, big teams, that's what I did. And they, it really helped with the transition of those first 90 days. Still felt a little underwater. I still did say, why did I do this? Right? But I cannot imagine what would have happened to me if I didn't do that.
Yeah. I love how you approach that, right? Because those are your three most important stakeholders when you go into that new leadership role: your boss, your peers, your team, right?
Hmm.
Those are the people that you're going to interact with the most, that you need to establish a relationship, a connection, trust with very quickly,
Yep.
right? And I love how you approach that very practically. Like, let's talk to my boss. I do firmly believe, and it is one of those things. It's never going to be in a job description. It's never going to get openly said. Your boss is never going to say your job is to make me look good. That's that unwritten rule, right? That expectation that is there, yet nobody's going to say it,
Yep.
right? And it is your job. I do firmly believe that. I've said that to my boss and my boss's boss of, you've never said this to me, but I believe in my heart this
Yep.
is my job, right? And what a way to establish a connection with your boss right from the start. Because as a leader myself, if one of my team members came and said, what can I do to make you look good? Instant connection, right? Like trust, buy-in, it's all there because I know that they're invested in me. And I already know for myself as a leader, I'm invested in my team. I want them to win, right? But
Yep.
for them to come back and say, how can I make you win? How can I make you look good?
Hmm.
You establish that relationship and then going to your peers, understanding, okay, how can we communicate together? Because if you can't collaborate with your peers,
Yep. I
you're in
mean,
trouble.
yeah, right. You don't put that product out just by yourself, right? You're not the startup where you and one other buddy working in the garage kind of stuff, right? That's
Yeah.
not the place we're talking about. And I think, the kind of conversation that I have, I didn't know I was doing it. I just knew that, again, this was practical, this was helpful. And, as I sort of step back into my coaching practice and looking at those kind of methodologies, like you were setting the invitation for engagement,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you were doing the initiation versus, making it someone else's responsibility to say, tell me what I'm supposed to do. Tell me how I'm supposed to, like, no, like, I think, there's not enough time to waste if you think about it, right? The world is moving
Yeah.
so fast. And so if you are able to do that as, like, so this is as an emerging leader, had I had this playbook, what a game changer, right? Like I
Oh, yeah.
honestly think I would have been promoted faster had I known that. Because when I first came in, there was no instructions. There's not a manual, right? And I just figured it out. I'm so glad that I was the kind of person that could figure it out because there were also plenty of people who had this aspiration, step into leadership, didn't have help, didn't have support, and to hit the burnout. I mean, I did hit burnout multiple times in my life. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But then had no support and no way to recover. And so especially the people who had the good intention of coming in and had this vision of doing great things, of serving and building amazing products and services, when they burn out like that and they go, you know what? I guess this is not for me and I back out, you lose the great talent with the heart that could have made
Yes.
that company amazing, right? Like you need more people in the succession line that has that capability and that has that drive, that has that vision, versus someone just said, "Well, I want to be in leadership because that's where the money is," right?
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with wanting more money, but like, um, you know, probably 30 years ago, that's probably the only career track. But now HR is much more aware and cognizant about like, really promote talent with talent lines. There are people who
Yeah.
should always be individual contributors, and you
Mm-hmm.
pair them up with a great leader, boom, right? Like amazing stuff happen. But if you put that really talented person as a leader, nothing happens,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, the potential that you thought was there never get realized.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like everybody, not everybody is intended to be a leader. And we need those people that are those strong individual contributors. We need leaders as well. Like there is a place for everybody in all of
Yes,
that, right?
absolutely.
And when you have a playbook like that that you can go and and I think about even the question of going back to your team and saying, here's how you can communicate with me. What a great way to remove the uncertainty for your team that they're going through. Because every time you change leaders, they're like, you know what, they are top performers. You always have a lot of strong people in your team, right?
Hmm.
And every time there's a change in leader, it impacts the performance of the team. We can't deny that that doesn't happen,
Yeah,
right? And when
it
you're,
does.
yeah, when you're open and transparent, and I agree with you. Like, I wish I had that playbook when I first became a leader 20 years ago, because I could think about a lot of heartache that I probably wouldn't have gone through, right? But when
Hmm.
you can remove that level of uncertainty and say, here's how you can engage with me, here's how you're going to get my attention, here's where I'm going to make a mistake, just so you know, because I'm human like you.
Right.
And this communication, if when I might communicate in this particular way, and it might not land, especially if you have a very different communication style than the leader before you, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah.
If you shake that up and like, I look at myself, I can tend to be a very direct communicator. And some leaders that I followed, they were a little bit more softer in their communication approach. So
Hmm.
when somebody like me comes in, they're like, whoa, like what just happened here, right? And being
Right.
upfront about that, they know what to expect, right? There's always going to be some level of uncertainty, but when you can remove pieces of it, you're setting yourself up as a leader, you're setting your team up for success. And like you said earlier, most of the companies that leaders are going to be working for, they are for profit. They are
Hmm.
to make money. We are to drive, leaders are expected to produce results regardless of how long you've been in the role, right? The results
Right.
still need to come. There's shareholders or product launches or all the things that go into it that they're looking for to happen. And as leaders, you have a piece of that responsibility to make those things happen.
Yeah. Right. And those are those type of sort of management type skill sets, is not really taught. And I self-learned those things, right? It wasn't until much, much later with like, if you get to a certain level, then the company kind of started investing in you. That's not to say I've been to other places or guests speaking where like they're different other companies invest in emerging leaders. But
Yeah.
even there are things that, still needs to be massaged a little bit, right? Because the piece of advice that I just said, every time that I talked about it, they're kind of looking at it, I go, no one ever said that to us, right? And so the other piece that's interesting as you were talking about it, because, the individual team members as they transition, right? Everybody's uncomfortable. And these kind of open communication attempts is really trying to not to take away the uncomfortableness, but like shorten the time frame of it. Like we're trying to
Mm.
collapse time here, right? Quantum
Yeah.
physics, right? We're trying to collapse time here because there is a product launch, there's a deadline, there's quarterly reports for your shareholders. Those things don't like, well, let me drop the expectation a little bit just because we hire a new leader. No one does that, right? So
Yeah. We're not delaying
yeah,
our
yeah, yeah.
shareholder call
No,
because
no,
we
no,
got a
just
new
because
leader
we have a
hired in this
change.
department.
Yeah. No, no, no one does that ever, right?
No
If
dividends this
someone does,
quarter. Sorry.
please drop a comment in this. I want to know because that's like the go unicorn to study. Um, but the other part of it is in a lot of, especially larger corporate organizations,
Yeah.
the tendency is, they put certain leader on leadership track and they want to put them in different places. So every 2 years or so, there's a new leader that comes in
Mm.
because the
Yep.
company rightly wants to sort of groom the right next generation in a different way. We won't get into whether or not that grooming is right or wrong, but the result of it is the team that remains to be the team in that role, those individual contributors have different bosses every 2 years.
Yeah.
right? They're always uncomfortable. And actually, um, what I often hear is that there's a there's a huge amount of mistrust for companies who do that with their leadership track, that exists in the individual team. Like, I don't even
Mm,
know if this person really knows what they're doing. I don't, they're not gonna stay, they're not gonna support me, and so on. So there's a different lens for the individual contributors to see this. But what I suggested, really, like, if you're kind of gonna be there for only about 2 years, 2.5 years, you don't have time to waste, right?
yeah.
Do that. Um, so like if everybody very consistently do this kind of practices, imagine how fast everyone grows too, right? Rather than sort of fumbling in the dark on like, let me try talking this way, see if that lands. Just tell me how I'm supposed to talk to you, right? So that's that. Yeah, I wish I did that right from the get go.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. I appreciate you sharing that because I think that is true because it does take time to find your footing as a leader, right? It's probably, especially if this is your very first leadership role, in the back of your mind, you're going to be like, what have I done? Probably for a good 12 to 18 months. Like it does take you that long just to figure things out, get your footing, get in a rhythm. You're going to be trying new things because you're going to be like, okay, well, I think this is going to work for me. Let's try this. Let's not
Mm-hmm.
figure out what meetings do I need to be in? What projects does my team have? What's the vision? Like there's a lot that comes in. It's almost like that fire hose just kind of opens up
Oh yeah.
onto a new leader. And it's like, okay, here you go. Right. And to do it, I don't want to say right, but to do it in a right way, in a way that you're going to get results, you can't rush all of it. Like it's just naturally going to take time. Yet, if there's playbooks like this where you can say, okay, this one I can increase my speed to efficiency here or speed to
Mm-hmm.
proficiency here, and we can reduce this level of uncertainty in this area, great, let's take it, because you might not have time, right? If you're going to be transitioned out in 2 years into a different role and a new leader is coming in, you don't get a 2-year pass on results. They still have
Right.
to be produced.
Right.
And especially if you're coming into a department or a team that might be responsible for critical projects of your organization, like make or break critical projects, or
Mm-hmm.
launching that next product that they've already said this product's going to make us X million or whatever. Like
Right.
there's
Right.
there's also a level of pressure that comes with that of you have to produce. So I think everything that you can do to reduce some of that really makes that transition for a new leader so helpful, not just for the leader, but like you said, for the team
For the team,
who's
for everybody.
still going to be there in 2 years potentially, right? Most of them will probably still be there in 2 years and
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be going through this again. And what a great way for you as a leader to set an example that you may be able to influence your team, that the next leader that comes in, they now know, hey, well, if that leader doesn't ask us, let's ask them because
I
this
love that.
worked really well.
Really well, yeah. And then, like kind of going back to your kind of the original question was about expectation, right?
Yeah.
This kind when you open up the communication portal in this way, I believe this is for the person who's kind of transitioning into leadership. This is the great way for you to harvest the expectation that is unspoken, that is culturally based. Like so now you have to be the person that parses the data, right? Like you open up the floodgate to sort of gather information. Now you have to parse. Then now when you spend, I don't know however long for you to sort of have those kind of conversation, but it wouldn't be a year, right? It wouldn't be a year. And so you have that initial set of data to go, okay, I thought this was an expectation. I think this is kind of, my own kind of thinking of what the expectation is. I now have data. I'm engineer, right? Like I now have data. Might check my expectation against what someone is saying to me, right? Do they actually match? Now the next stage here is whether they match or not match, that you can figure it out. Usually it doesn't. So now you go into problem solving mode. or project management mode, right? In a lot of ways, right? Which is like, okay, so this is the actual expectation. Because essentially it's like, if I hit these parts in this particular way, that means I am doing my job. That means I am producing, right? And so
Yeah.
now, how would I actually get that done? Because for a lot of people, like if I still have a full-time job for doing development, there's no way any of this stuff gets done, right? And maybe you won't be able to give it away like super fast, like the actual daily work. I'm not saying maybe give it away is the wrong word. The delegation, you have to figure out delegation. I think that's another, like it's a common, like we know this. The first time transition for an emergent leader from an individual contributor to some sort of leadership, one of the biggest hurdle is learning how to delegate, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, but I contend learning how to delegate is not the biggest problem. Learning the expectation, then go, okay, this is the vision, this is what I'm supposed to do. Now, how would I get delegate based on that vision? Right?
Mm.
Then the skill, then you go set in. Because, I mean, the reality of it is there probably are some things that you don't really want to let it go because it makes you happy. Right? As a person who's working in that company, right? So now you get to make some really conscious choices about how do you want to manage your own job plus the job of, 10 other people, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about like, this is again, do a Google search, HPR has articles on Wazoo about why is it so difficult. I think there was a new one recently about like why is it so difficult to do delegation. They have very good tips. All of that all those tips won't really help you until you really figure out what your job is supposed to be.
Yes.
Then you figure out what you're supposed to delegate, right? The how and stuff like that's the skill set. That's why you're a leader. You're learning all those new things. But getting that expectation really clear from your different counterparts, right? Up, cross, down. Then the next step is okay, now I know what's important, then I can delegate. Because like if you don't know what's important, what are you delegating? Really, right?
Well, and how do you delegate it, right?
Hmm.
So I love that you brought that up because I do think delegation, I always like to call it an art. It's a skill, it's an art. There is a way to do it. And leaders do try to delegate early because that's part of what they hear, right? Like that's another one of those, I think,
Oh yeah.
unrealistic expectations that you got to delegate, you got to delegate. And it's like you make a great point of if you don't know what the expectation is, you don't know what you really need to delegate versus what you don't. You don't know
Yeah.
who you need to delegate it to and who you shouldn't, right? Or how you go
Right.
about it. And I think when you're clear on the expectations of your role, your department, your boss, your peers, your team, the how to delegate becomes a lot easier because you kind of have that, you have that foundation already that you can just
Hmm.
build upon, right? But you can't just start delegating for the sake of delegating
Oh,
because it
absolutely. That is.
backfires on you every time.
Thank you for saying that. Yes. If you delegate for the sake of delegating, it will backfire on you. Because the art of the delegation is really about knowing what you're delegating, who you're delegating to, the 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 person that you're delegating to, what their capabilities are, and so on and so forth, right? And so there's definitely an art to it, but it requires you to sort of know the landscape, right? And there's just this is a whole nother podcast going in there about that, right? And so, but that's like it's probably like the shiny object that people talk about all the time when they talk about emerging leaders. Um, I think it is, but it's not the shiny object in my mind.
Oh yeah. This is really good. I have so many like questions and I feel like we could probably sit here all day and talk
Okay.
about this topic. Like I'm This is a wonderful conversation. I don't know. I've got a lot of things running through my head right now of all the expectations,
Me
even for
too.
myself as a leader, of, oh, where have I not been clear on expectations, or where am I unclear of the expectations of me? And I hope that all of the leaders listening, there's going to be some that are going to be sitting there, and maybe not some, many, because
Many.
let's just be honest, we've all been there. And if you're a leader and you're in this place of where you're like, oh, I realize I have taken on too many unrealistic expectations, or where has Annie been in sharing this playbook with me? I wish I had this 6 months ago
I'm so sorry.
to have those conversations with my team. Listen, I wish I had it
Yeah,
20 years ago,
I
right?
know.
Like,
Oh yeah.
we both do. And that's how, I think that's the great thing about leadership experiences, is that in the moment, you we're all going to have things that we're going to miss. That's just part of the transition. And it's great when leaders like us who have the experience can help the new leaders coming in. Like, this is why we need to talk about these things, to help new leaders, to share it. We only know that we should have done these things because we didn't do them,
Yeah.
and now it's, let's bring this out and let's share to help other new leaders not have to go through some of the same challenges, or they can get up to speed and more comfortable in the role more quickly. So if there's a leader out there, not if, there is a leader out there who's like, oh my god, that's me, that's me, I'm overwhelmed and missed expectations, I'm not really clear, like, what would be one thing that you would recommend to that new leader that they can shift today to start that transition of getting clear on the expectations of their role?
Yeah, I was really the only thing I can tell you is, at any part of this conversation, if you like wrote down multiple, ooh, this would be interesting to do, right? This would be interesting. Just pick one and go try it. I mean,
Mhm.
action leads to clarity. And the thing that I talked about, um, both you and I, Shannon, we talked about this because it's a lived experience. It's in our body, and we're so passionate about it. But the reality of it is, it's a lived experience of you and I, right? And so
Yes.
the people who are listening to it that like resonates with different pieces of the things that we've said. I mean, I want to say this, to anybody who's listening, which is you're you, and you're very unique, and I want to make sure that you honor you. So if any piece of the stuff that we said is like this rings really true, what I would encourage you to do is like, then how could I try that a little bit today? And then, but like, don't just try and drop it. Like, but me being the engineer, you try it and go, and then what happened next? Like, be really super curious about. I tried this little experiment because someone said, and it sounds like a really good thing to try. Let me try to do it and see what's the result of it, and keep refining that, right? Because now you are a living now you are living the experience of being a leader. And for those people who, and honestly, the things that we talk about really applies to everybody and is a mirror of your life, right? Think about how many life expectations that we have that is like overwhelming, right? So there are things that you can sort of bring it back to all sorts of places, but don't think about it as, oh my God, this is like ginormous framework that I need to actually put in and implement. Pick the smallest possible piece and go try it.
Yes.
And
I
and
love that.
and
Pick
drop us a
one.
note. Like I tried this and this happened, right? Like would love to hear from
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Pick one thing, take action, but don't give up.
you. Yeah,
Reflect on it. What worked, what didn't work. Okay, how, get really curious. And like Annie said, definitely come back and share with us, because I want to know from this, like, what did you try and how did that work for you?
hmm,
Right. Because again, this is how we help other leaders, is leaders sharing their experiences. So when we come back and we keep the dialogue going, this is how we all learn and grow. All right, I have
absolutely.
one final question on that. So we talked
Okay.
about the leader, of what they can do. I want to talk to the leader that is hiring the new leaders,
Hmm.
right? Who might be sitting there going, "Ooh, I wish I would have known this," right? And is might be questioning, did I set clear expectations for my new leader, or how can I set the new leader up that I'm currently interviewing or hiring or who is starting next week? Like, what can that leader do to make sure that they are setting their leaders up for success?
I think it's the same thing, right? It's really that question. If what we said made you ponder, oh, I wonder if I'm setting really expectation, like great curiosity, which then go, did I? What is my expectation, right? Um, what if in the middle of an interview you go, hey, you know what, let's get real. Your job really is to make sure that, you make me, we talk about it. The sanitized word is to make the company successful, right? But really, your job is to make sure that you make me look good, right? And so, if I say this, what comes to your head, right? Like
Mm,
unconventional interviewing questions. What is the person? What is the person going to say, right? Maybe that. I mean, it is a very unconventional question. I'd be really curious of what people say. That, right? Um, because I know that I have said that to the people interviewing me before. Like I always said, like I know my job is to make sure that my boss looks good. And so based on what I know so far, this is what my understanding is, right? And so have that dialogue, even if have it with someone else. These leaders are like, I wonder if I'm really clear about my expectation. It's so great that you're asking yourself that question. Then go answer it. Have a conversation with someone else and actually figure out this is what I really expect that to occur. If you have the power to change that job description to make it clear, awesome. But also realize job description is really a framework, and it's something that I don't even know what to call it. Sets the grade, sets the pay raise, whatever the case may be. But you want to hire the person that actually do the work that you need to do. So
yeah.
why wouldn't you be super clear about what you need as you're interviewing that person, as they're coming in? And here's the thing, right? If you make the hire and then now all of a sudden you like get really clear on expectation, they're like, oh my God, I don't want this,
Mm,
right? Shockers, but you wouldn't waste time, right? You wouldn't waste 2 years trying to figure out why isn't this person performing to my unspoken expectation. Then just go, well, then we need to find someone who really gets what I want. So clarity, right? Like Brene Brown says, clear is kind. Really paint that picture,
yes.
right? And so if you're a leader and you're thinking, oh, maybe I didn't do a good job of that before, you can start now. Never too late, right? Have that dialogue with someone else who could help you flesh out what that would be. Another coach, right? Or another peer that's probably a little more like-minded. So go do that, and then have the conversation. Make that an invitation to your existing right slew of leaders that are reporting to you to make sure that you're all on the same page. Can you imagine that? Right, when everybody's
Would
aligned
be
on
awesome.
really the stuff that you could do, right? The way that it could change people's life, right? Because the product and services actually make sense. It actually is helpful. It actually makes people's life easier, right? So why wouldn't you want that?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to something that you said right at the start, right? When you're leading your people well, they will deliver the products and services that they're expected to because they're being led well. And it all
Mm-hmm.
starts with having those clear expectations all around for everybody, from
Mm,
the leader hiring the leader to the people that work with them to the people that work for them.
yeah.
That clarity on all of it. So I just want to, as we wrap up, thank you for your insights. This was a fantastic conversation. I loved that we tackled this topic and really can help new leaders really understand what they can do, and the leaders that are hiring them, how you can make sure that you're setting your team up for success. I love the practical solutions. Those are things that people can walk away with, and they can start implementing this well, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe tomorrow, or maybe you need to take a day or two to really take some time to think it through of how do you want to approach that. I do want to just leave everybody with one thing that Annie said of take action, right? Don't take too long to think it through.
Yeah.
Take some time, be intentional with your thoughts, but start getting into action, right? And maybe it's starting that conversation with your boss where you might have a little bit more room to, I don't want to say make mistakes, but be vulnerable and try to test out the conversation, because that's really what it all boils down to. Is we can talk about theory all day, but if you don't take anything and actually implement it and start doing it and be comfortable with pivoting, reflect, see what worked, what didn't, be curious, be willing to make the changes. That's how you are going to grow as a leader. That's how you're going to get clarity. That's how you're going to be successful. And everybody around you is going to have that same level of success. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
You're welcome. This is such a great conversation, and I always love talking to you. And the things that we talk about brings, it's helpful. It's really helpful, and it really pulls it out of me. Like this is what I believe, right? This is what we did. This is how we learned. This is how we lived. These are all the mistakes that we made, and if you could do something different, let's do different.
Yeah, absolutely. So if people resonated with what you shared today and they want to know more and they want to get more of your insights and your leadership philosophies, what's the best way that people can connect with you?
Send me an email. So my website, createtransformationcoaching.com. You can go on there, take a look at my website. It continues to change and evolve, but there's always a way to actually get a hold of me. Find me through LinkedIn. I'm relatively active on that. Connect with me, follow me. Send me a message. Tell me what you think, please, of the conversation that we're having today. Ask me specific questions if you need to, right? I'm here to support people who are curious. I'm here. I love learning, and I love people who love learning.
Mhm.
And so I'm here to help.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I'll put all of that in the show notes. So everybody will be able to have links to be able to connect with Annie. And she wants you to reach out and share with her what you learned. I want you to reach out. Share either in the notes here, connect with Annie, connect with myself, share with us what it is that you loved about this episode and how you are applying it in your leadership. So thank you again for your conversation. And I just want to leave all of our leaders, you know, we'll be back next week with another episode, or I'll be back next week with another episode. And in the meantime, I want everybody to remember, like, leadership is all about being you. So go out, fellow leaders, lead with confidence, show up every day as a leader that you are striving to be, not the leader that others tell you that you have to be,
Mm.
and really make the decision today to invest in your development as a leader.